Welcome back, divers. This is going to be episode 4, and it is going to be brought to you by Wild Pitch Hot Sauce. Spicy and tangy and a little bit sweet. So just like us, covers the board. So shout out Virgil for that one. He's been a mentor for me and a former coach for me. So we're going to bring him on as a guest in the future, but we'll save that for another day. And how are you today, Luca?
Phenomenal. Doing good.
Um,
Beautiful out. Just living life. How about yourself?
Oh, I can't complain, living the dream, as they all say. So
There we go.
blessed beyond belief is what I am. So
Yes, sir.
might as well, do what we do and dive right in, right? So
Might as well.
today's topic, a little general overview, is we're going to dive into higher level thinking. But in order to get there, in our conversation, the question that has kind of been provoking me a little bit, and I've been journaling about and just trying to understand a little bit, is what makes somebody memorable. And before you answer that, let me give a little background. So I was at home and I met a friend for lunch, and somebody that I knew was sitting down having breakfast at the same spot that I was. And I went over there and said hi or whatever, and he introduced me to his friends, and I introduced my name, and he made the comment. He goes, "I'm not going to remember that." And I left that conversation, or I left that day, and I just kind of I pondered about it. I was like, is it relevant? But I don't think it is relevant, but I was just curious on what makes somebody memorable.
No, I mean, you know if someone's listening to you or not. So, first impression, eye contact, attention, checking your phone, like stuff like that. Like I just notice things based off just like your attentiveness and like your willingness to listen or willingness to share. But I guess just someone's memorable. I mean, yeah, a cliche would be different. Just be different. Um, I mean, I could speak of just experiences when I met people that like made me like I left the conversation like, wow, that was unique. And I think having those experiences, looking back on all of them, I would say each time the common theme would be that person was willing to like kind of give a piece to themselves. It wasn't superficial. Like they were willing to kind of put themselves out there to an extent. It's like they didn't really care if you judged them, and just I guess authenticity, whatever you like. I guess that's the best way to put it. Um, you can tell when someone just kind of is themselves, and I'm attracted to that. Obviously not like I'm not saying sexually make this weird, but like I'm attracted to people having people in my life that are willing to just be themselves, be authentic, and not putting up a facade just because they think that's what I want to hear. Or, they think you need to be a certain person for a certain group of people and whatever. Like I would say that's probably for me personally is the most memorable about a person. It's like their willingness to just be authentic and just put themselves out there, and maybe they just make a complete fool of themselves. But like I not like I appreciate them making a fool of themselves, but to a certain extent, I appreciate the lack of care. Like, and a lot of times that comes what it comes with time. But when you really meet someone from the get go, they're that way. I think that's memorable, and it makes you at least want to at least have another encounter with them. Um,
That's true.
yeah, I don't know. I suppose just being having like a memorable experience comes from just being
I like
yourself.
your answer. I like your answer.
I
It was
guess.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't come
I,
up with anything good, really.
I'm not gonna lie. If I introduce myself to somebody and they're telling me like, "Oh, I'm not gonna remember that," I'm like, "All right, well, I have a good life." I mean, I don't know. It's like
My
that's a terrible. I don't know why he would say that. That's like,
Well, my first thought, like the thought that came to me when I left was, well, you don't know me.
yeah,
So like I guess going on to that is well, like kind of what you're saying is show yourself immediately. And I don't even know if that's
like he didn't give
proper.
you a chance.
I don't even know if yeah, I don't even know if that's right. And
He didn't give you a
like I said, I
chance.
just thought it was something interesting that like provoke thought for me for a couple of days, and I wanted to hear what your opinion was on it. But we can honestly move into something that
I guess
I
the
have a
opposite
lot of
of that,
opinions
to make so memorable, be the opposite of that.
of.
I guess he's an example. He's a bad example, I guess, to a certain degree because you'll remember him for being an ass. But like, you don't want to remember for the the wrong reasons. But um, the opposite of that.
Yeah, true. So we both played ball at a high level, um, at a really high level, and I want to get your opinion on like state of mind during competition. So give me a little time to preface this a little bit, and I'm going to run through what I ran through last time in the last podcast at the end of it. So Joe Mazzulla, Celtics guy, young coach. Um, Honestly, like in that Brad Stevens tree, Brad Stevens has a lot of success, and that story's interesting in itself. And I would love to sit down and talk to them about it, but obviously I don't have that opportunity currently. But Doris Burke had an interview with Missoula and was sharing his philosophy. And I'm not going to quote it properly or even remotely close, but the basis, the way that I took it was that he encourages his players to think through the game. So to constantly be thinking, to always be thinking, like while you're playing. Whereas like for me, even like at college and early in my career, even I mean all the way through my career, I strive to try to be blank in thought when I was on the mound, or even like high school basketball.
Mhm.
And so I'm sitting there watching the game, and I'm sitting there with my dad, and I honestly I go into this trance, and I kind of get lost in it a little, and I'm thinking about applying that to baseball. Like I'm picturing myself thinking through the game and thinking about successful outings against non-successful outings, like what that meant, like what that experience was like. Because like I have a lot of detailed experiences. Like I might not remember every detail, but my memory is pretty darn good. And I don't know. When you were in competition, were you a blank thought? Were you like lost in thought guy? Were you continually thinking? Were you like what was your process while you were in game pitching? Like even dive into in between innings for me.
I will say when I was at my worst was when I was thinking too much.
What does
So
that
I think
mean?
there's a fine line between thinking too much and thinking enough. Um, but also it's I can't relate to someone who's an
Wait, wait.
overthinker for the specific event. You know what I mean? Like, my first instinct, like when I hear something like that, they want to think within the game, right? That's a very good concept, of course, but it's also the idea of doing that is tough because you have to be able to put your mind in one place, and that art right in and of itself is just tough to accomplish. Like, no matter if you're an NBA player or not, like these guys are 23, 24, 25, 26, 7, like they're in their mid 20s. These are young men, and like you know more likely than not, they're figuring things out on their own personally as well. So the idea of being able to put your mind in one place and constantly just think that much in that moment is a tough task. And I'm not saying they can't. Obviously, they won the championship last year. They did it pretty damn well. But I say that's it depends on who you're speaking with and who you're dealing with. That can actually accomplish that. For me, uh, you know, I always noticed when I did my best, I was singing to myself. Actually, I was just singing songs in my head. And I was obviously thinking about the game, thinking about like, situations and stuff like that. But that was almost like a byproduct of just kind of like being present. Like it kind of just came to me. I knew what the right things to do. Like I knew certain situations, like if I needed to step off, if the guy was going early, if I needed to, just I don't know if there's stuff that you need to do, like first and third situations. Like that's really when you're thinking. Like for me, like just sitting there pitching to a guy. Like I'm not sitting there throwing the first pitch thinking about like what pitch 11 will be or like it's kind of reading each swing, reading each pitch, and like moving forward like which with each moment. But um, I noticed that I did my best when I was just like kind of blank to a certain extent, like just singing to myself and just being completely present.
Okay, I got you
Yeah.
there. Um, So what I kind of want to say, or I'm gonna keep going with this is, I think he like the what I like you said earlier is like simply it's a simple thought, but it's a continual thought within the game. So like how I
Hmm.
would describe it on baseball terms, and like this is where like I would struggle in game because I would go for that blankness, right? And I wasn't necessarily like I thought that was flow state. But I think flow state is like being so like invested in what you're doing. You're so singularly focused on like the process. So like it's second and third with two outs, and I'm facing the three hitter of a lineup, but like they're a lethal hitter, righty, and a lefty's on deck, and it's like a full count. So like a lot of times for me, the mistake that I would make is I'm blanking thoughts. So it's like, oh, I want to get this guy out. Well, my safe pitch is like a fastball away or a slider. Whereas like my aggressive pitch is a curveball. One, because it's a large movement. Two, because like it's rarely a strike. But if I throw it with intent, then I put the hitter out of decision. Because like I'm, you know what I'm saying. So like therefore, if he swings, I win. If I throw it with conviction and it's down and it's over the plate, down behind the plate, and it's a ball, and it's a good walk, right? The catcher can block it, bases loaded. Now I'm facing a left. Now I'm left on left with a higher probability of getting an out,
Hmm.
right? So it's like I never thought about that until he said that. It's like as a pitcher, like I had those. Now they have the time clocks on it, but I had the time and the ability to think on it because like I was always ready, and like I do think I'm a high thinker, so or a deep thinker. So if I would have applied that to like my game, I would have been like, oh, like let's be aggressive here, and I probably would have gotten a swing more times than not. And like honestly, the better hitters, the more professional hitters are taking it, but like I probably would have experienced more success and pitched deeper into ball games if I would have been thinking about what I was doing in that singular moment. Now, comma,
Hmm.
when it comes time to execute the pitch, I can't be thinking about the lefty on deck, right? So like within the game, there's two levels of thought. Like there's that thought of like, okay, this is how the game's moving, but then there's that external cue of it. Like I gotta deliver, like I gotta move into that next thing in the pitch. So it's like a moment by moment basis of continuing stacking like the proper thought on proper thought on proper thought. It allows you to be in flow, and they just keep moving. So like for me, I look back and when I got blank, I like it was almost like an egotistical thing of like it doesn't matter because I'm present and presence dominates, and that's something I've said in the past a lot. And I think there needs to be a thought behind the presence. Like there needs to be a thought behind the present, and it needs to be simple. Like if you're diving into well, like oh it's 32 degrees and it's windy and the winds from the southwest. No, like that's not what I'm talking about. Like if I'm singularly focused on the task at hand, okay, so I can be aggressive here, like with the pitch call. So now I'm past the pitch call. I decided on a risky, aggressive pitch. So the next thing is execution. Now I move into execution and get into that blankness right before thought to allow my body to replicate the action that I've practiced over and over and over again. So like that's kind of like when I heard that, it was revolutionary to me. And now like I'm retired, but I do think it's an elite level of a high level of thinking. And I don't know if any of that resonated with you, or if you have any like contradictions, please, I would love to hear them because I think this is something that I would like to evolve on, especially if I get into coaching or consulting.
Hmm. Yeah. No, what makes me, what I like my question to that is obviously in baseball in general, there's pitchers call their own game, pitchers don't. You're thinking about next pitches, you're thinking about like stuff like that, how to set guys up, or you trust the catcher's going to do that for you. A lot of catchers, just like, they do that on their own. Like it's the pride thing. They call the game, and you kind of just surrender to that, and you just kind of obviously you guys are working together, but you know what I'm getting at in terms of like elite thinking, right? If you're not in control, like or you're in control to a certain extent, but if you're not like picking the pitches and stuff like that, at what level is the idea of like thinking too much versus just executing what the guy, obviously you trust the catcher, what does that thinking take away from the execution itself if you were just focused on executing that pitch in that moment? Do you think that takes away from that? If you're thinking about let's say all the other things prior to this that aren't really necessary. Because there's, like I said, there's guys like Chris Sale, for example. He just trusts. He's just like, whatever the catcher puts down, I throw. He was like, if I don't execute, it's on me.
Yeah, and I think it goes down to that old adage of one pitch at a time, and that
Hmm.
it's buying into that and understanding. I think it's understanding what that process means. Like let's break down one pitch at a time. Like one pitch at a time, you have so you ended that last pitch, so your warm up's in, right, and so it's the first pitch of the game. You move in from that warm up mindset into that game mode, right? So if you're worried about how you're going to punch him out on pitch one, you're solely relying on your physical ability to throw the ball over the plate, and relying on him to fail at the dish, which is a high likelihood, and that's why like guys like Chris Sale are at an advantage because pitching promotes that. Hitting is the hardest thing to do. Like you're succeeding 30% of the time. So I would say to be at the top, to be at the highest level, I think it's a combination of trusting that physicality along with that evolution of thinking through the game. So like in the first inning, in the first time through the lineup, you're gathering a lot of information. You're like, okay, fastballs away, or curveballs, like
Hmm.
whatever your game plan is, and then you're allowing that to take you one pitch at a time. So okay, so first pitch, fastball down and away, take, strike. Why would I do anything different? So now you focus on the next one of execution. Now at night, now it's okay. Now I'm going to execute off of that fastball down and away for pitch two. So like you had like, and obviously there's space and time in between each pitch. So I would say on the pitching side, the moment that you get the ball back, after you, okay, so the moment you get the ball back, you're in thought of an external thing because what I've learned is internal does not work in competition. So pitch selection. So you and the catcher are communicating. So you're once you decide on pitch choice selection, then the thought process simply moves into execution, like external, and like you
Hmm.
stay in that external state over and over again, and then you gain knowledge. So then that ends, and now you're like you stop, you reset, you get the ball back from the third baseman or first baseman, wherever the out was made, and you're back to square one at one pitch at a time. Like it's that slowing the game down so that you have a lot. You're intaking a lot of information, but your output is simple. Like you do what you do in practice. Like in a bullpen, you're not thinking about fastball down and away. You're just doing it. So
Hmm.
like that's where I say like like I think it's a common like now that I'm talking and thinking about it. Like honestly, this is a think session for me, but like it's a combination. Like that trust and faith and belief in yourself with God is that blankness, but you have to combine that with the presence and the understanding of the game. So like as you evolve, like when you're younger and evolving through the game, you can simply rely on your physical ability. Because like in high school, I didn't have to think about it. I just knew that I was better than everybody. And then in college, yeah, I faced my fair share of like up and bumps, but I got beat around. But then once I
Hmm.
overcame that and I just developed that confidence, then it was we were back to square one. But like it seemed that like my game would stall out at a certain level because I didn't continue to stack it and understand what one pitch at a time meant.
So, are you under the like the belief that in order to be present, the in order to be true presence is the elimination of thought and just accepting now? Like, let's take sports away from it. Like, if you're just present, enjoying the moment, right? do you think in those moments you're thinking still? Or do you think that to be truly present, to be with your artist and take in what's around you, say you're on a nature walk, the elimination of thought, I feel like, is the goal. Because I mean, my perception of meditation, the things that I've worked on, like essentially what I've come to learn is that meditation basically is to put your mind in one place and keep it there, and that a long time in meditation, that's basically eliminating thought completely and just being present and just like finding my place and staying there. And the longer I can do that, obviously the more beneficial it's going to be. And I found that that same practice, like I was talking about the heart of rose and like putting mind in one place, and like I've put dots on a wall and sat there and stared at the dot for 10 minutes and not let my mind wander. And that for me it was a direct correlation to be able to focus while I'm just staring at the catcher's glove and have that be my single focus, like call it the blinders, like on a horse, and not have anything going on in the stadium around get in the way of my focus. But that focus is almost like is obviously productive, but that focus almost takes away from, in my experience, it took away from the thought, because that focus allowed me to detach from the thought and just execute. And I'm curious, do you know where I'm getting at? Like, at what point is too much thought or thinking actually taking you away from the moment? In which case, actually doing you harm rather than good. So that's where when I hear like thinking into the game, it's a good idea, and obviously they've done a great job. And I'm not critiquing him, but I find that that's a tough concept for people to understand if they haven't actually put in work prior to be able to centralize their focus. If you just give your mind free rein to think, God knows where you're going to end up.
Well, yeah. So I think there's you have a lot of good things there, and I first want to answer your first question: is what is
Yeah, yeah,
presence?
sorry. Yeah,
And I
exactly.
think it's the elimination of self consciousness. And self consciousness is that doubt. Okay, so like it would be like I
Subconscious
don't
is
know
innately the
I don't
knowledge
know
of
if
being
I'm gonna
naked.
do that. Yeah, so it's the release of that, and then the focus is like your broad focus is to win the game, but the minute focus is to win that single pitch
Hmm.
in baseball terms. Win that single in life terms, win that single moment. Like I'm conversing with you. My goal, my focus is to hear and hopefully understand what you're saying, or to gain an understanding of your perspective. I guess is my goal, my focus of confidence. So I think,
Hmm.
and then you add direction to that. So it's like it's simple. Like you add the direction. Like I want to throw like baseball back to baseball. I want to throw this pitch down and away. That's my direction. Okay. My focus is to win the pitch, and then my presence is to release my self consciousness of the fear of failure.
How do you get rid of that in your mind?
Get rid of get rid of what?
The self consciousness. How is that eliminated in your
Um,
idea? In your like your idea, I'm curious what you think. Because I haven't. I know what the answer for myself at least is.
how how do you get rid of the fear of failure, or how do I get rid of self consciousness?
The self consciousness of going out there. Just the idea of going out there and worrying. Like, what's your? Like, you know what I mean? How do you get rid of that?
I think it's an immersion in the moment, and also with that confidence,
Where does the
like
confidence come from?
the process of preparation.
Yeah.
So like now I'm talking a lot about in-game thinking, and like I'm talking a lot about like professional athletes per se, but like it also does still apply to life.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So like
Absolutely.
I mean, to break it down a little bit on a daily basis, like and like the theme of this podcast is going deeper to aim higher. So the
Hmm.
focus is to aim higher. The self consciousness, the fear is the fear of growth, or the fear of putting myself out there. So how do I let go of the fear of putting myself out there is kind of how we started, that is to not be afraid to be memorable, is to be completely yourself no matter the situation, and know, if you
You know,
keep
I mean, you
quiet,
think of
go ahead.
what you told me way back when. I'm not sure if you remember this, but we're sitting there in the training room, right? It was you and I, Danielle, I believe, um, and some other people as well. And we were talking about stuff and whatever. I don't know why this came up, but um, basically being the alpha came up, the alpha in the room, alpha and whatever it is. It just came up in conversation. And I'll never forget what you said. I don't know if you do or not, but I journaled about it actually afterwards. And a lot of people, the perception of being alpha is like being stronger, being better, being this, right? But you said, and I tell myself this on a daily basis, every morning, every morning. So being alpha doesn't come from how big or strong you are. It comes from your mental presence. It comes from being you, no matter where you are, who you're with, what you're doing, or how you feel. You said that word for word. And like, where did that come from? Because it comes, it's exactly what you were just saying to a certain extent. It's just that. It's
Well,
being you.
I was okay. I gotta give you a little preface. I would pre Tommy John and a little bit into Tommy John surgery rehabilitation. I would describe myself as loud in a lot of sense, volume, appearance, um, loud, and I'm sitting I'm sitting there at dinner last night thinking about the past and reminiscing on the past with some guys. And when I was loud in public places, it promoted insecurities. So it was like looking back, that's not really who I am. It wasn't in alignment because I was being loud to be loud. Whereas like now, like I'm quiet and I believe that the alpha is the last guy to speak or the guy that's like you how do you phrase this is I mean, the alpha is not afraid of failure, but he's taking in everything else in order to understand his surroundings.
Hmm.
So, in order to understand your surroundings, you can't always be the one talking. You can't be the one in the leader. Like I like the wolf pack, like theory or algorithm of like the strongest is in the back. Like yeah, you have your strong a couple strong guys in front leading the group, but like the leader of the pack is in the back. So like to me, that's understanding what the culture is is providing. Like that guy in the back kind of dictates the culture, kind of dictates the direction, dictates the a lot of the presence because when he speaks, he's probably you know everybody's listening because he's rarely speaking, right? So like
Hmm.
the ability to be myself, I would say myself in looking at my dad's quiet, like really quiet. And I'm like, and the older I get, and the more like I learn is like that I relate to that. And like that is more me than it's ever been. Like whereas like I would blast music or I would wear loud clothing. Like I still like to be out there. Like I like to be different. Like I people have classified me as different and I love that. But like also like I'm different in the fact of like I'm changing and adapting. Like I no longer want to walk in the room and be the one that everybody sees. I kind of want to, have my feelers out, feel the room out, and then go out. So I think that that came into that like during Tommy John rehab, during that stuff is because I was becoming uncomfortable with myself and trying to understand what it creates. And like the fact of the nature is like I believe that people follow me in a sense or are attracted to me because of that. I and maybe I'm delusional, but I think I've always had more control of what goes on in the locker room than maybe I realize or like anything. Like I think everybody has that ability to influence a group of people and grow a culture. And that's kind of like in that first or second talk we had is what is culture? What creates a successful environment? Like what is good coaching? Those are some questions that I would love to dive into.
Hmm.
Like, what is a good
Yeah.
standard for an organization? Like, you want everybody to be the alpha dog. Like, having a group of alpha dogs is amazing because then you can trust that everybody's going to do their job and more.
Sadly, though, those situations don't always prove to be successful. I mean, how many times have you seen in the NBA they get three superstars together and they can't win?
Well, I wouldn't say that's. I don't. I would say that's a lack of culture, and I don't know.
Possibly, yeah.
I'm
But
not
I'm saying
even
those are
realize
at
that
least three
either.
alphas.
But again, it's like when you see championship teams, what do you see at the end of the celebration? Like they're brothers. And what do you see out of those teams that are loaded with superstars? There's conflict, there's toxicity, there's me over us. That's not alpha isn't me over us. Alpha is all of us together moving in the same direction. Let me lead you, right? Like if I'm working hard and not running my mouth and I'm the superstar, like honestly, Royce
Leading by
Lewis.
example.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Royce Lewis.
I mean, Royce is a great example.
Amazing human being. Amazing
Yeah.
human being. Right?
He impressed me from the moment I met him. The
Right?
humility he has. I mean,
But
he
the
was one of the
work
most
ethic to
impressive human
go
beings
along
I've been
with it,
around in professional baseball.
the work ethic, the willingness to, go and do it.
There's also his inclusiveness, though. He was never too big for anybody.
Yeah.
He didn't care who you were, what you did. He was, you were a person. And, like, I admired him very much so. Like, the way he handled himself, obviously, but just the way how inclusive he was. And just how he was very open to anybody. No matter where you were, like, it didn't matter to him. He was just, he was honestly, the only thing he wanted to do is just enjoy himself, enjoy the moment. Always smiling, always light of the room. He was, I really enjoyed my
And
time with him.
and honestly, like you saw him at like a hard time.
Yeah,
Like that was his
exactly.
second ACL surgery, and he was missing out on years. Like and like I no, I have I can praise Royce up and down, but and I hope to have him on here too one day. But
Yeah, another guy, Matt
I
Carino, same situation. He's
right,
another
and
one.
so like you put those guys in a room, like when we're in a room together and we're playing Catan, right? I'm catching a cramp right now, by the way.
Some water.
And we're playing Catan. What were those games like?
Competitive.
Competitive, but
They're
also
fun.
they were fun. They
Yeah,
were
yeah.
fun because everybody knew what the goal was.
Well, everyone's true focus is to make sure Royce wasn't cheating, but that's beside
That's not
the
that's not true. Royce won a lot. That's fine. That's fine. But
Oh,
again,
that's funny.
and like that's kind of similar conversation I had the other day is what creates culture. Like what you've been on those teams like the Wichita team I was on. It might have been the most fun I've played in a single season ever. Like it was be previous to York, and it's different. One's affiliate, one's independent ball. But I'm just like the camaraderie, the chemistry, the love for showing up every day and Wichita like was amazing. Like it was the most enjoyable thing to be a part of. And it's like that wasn't replicated at every level I had. Like that was special moments, and I've had a couple of special teams, but even the York team was special in the fact that it was magical.
Hmm.
So like, what creates that? What allows for those things to happen? And you've had to have experiences of that sort.
Yeah. Honestly, what we've spoken about, like those experiences. I mean, experiences with teams that are truly special. It boils down to each player just being themselves. Like no one. There's no ego. None of that. It's just doing you, being you, and then of course it's only natural. It's gonna funnel out. There's always a hierarchy. There's always that one or two guys up top. Always, people are gonna look up to those one or two guys. Every clubhouse has them. It's silly to think that there's gonna be 15 top dogs, even though they are all very very good. There's still always one or two, and the thing is, those one or two don't always have to be the best players. I mean, a lot of times they're not actually. They're just guys that have really, really high morals, and they're really admirable as the way that the people they are, the person they are. Like guys like David Ross, for example. Like these guys are, wasn't a big player on the team when they won the World Series twice. He was the Cubs, but like he was the clubhouse guy. He was the guy. It's like, why? It's like, well, I don't know him, but you have to believe that he had something that people wanted to emulate. They respected him. But I feel like morals and what you're seeking and striving for something bigger than yourself, I feel like that collectively creates the environment. And like we said, we were talking about before in another podcast, and we've had conversations plenty, especially the day in New York. It's like what creates the team that does that? It's like, well, each person is focused on being their best selves in each moment, not focused on what's going on later, what's going on in the future, like all this stuff. Like they're just focused on now, and that collectively over a group of guys, that's powerful. So, and then of course it's fun because no one's sitting there trying to prove themselves to anybody. It's just they're doing themselves, and that culture is contagious. That's fun. That's inclusive. I mean, that's everything you could imagine out of a clubhouse. And put that over a span of a season. Like what could be better than that? Being in that environment every single day. Like what could be better for your growth than that? So at the end of the day, it's like it's not about you, but then at the same time, it's like it is. It's like, are you getting something out of it? It's like if every single person in that locker room is getting something out of each day, it's like that's a good environment.
We're going to circle back to your question that you had an answer for that I kept rolling on, rolling on through. What is an alpha to you?
An alpha to me? Well, I mean, my depiction of an alpha came from basically what I learned from you. It's like being alpha doesn't come from big or strong you are. It comes from your mental presence. It comes from being you, no matter where you are, who you're with, what you're doing, how you feel. So a lot of situations, it's just like if you can be you no matter what, if you're around people that don't particularly enjoy, if you're in a situation you don't particularly like, if you're not technically feeling the best you can possibly feel, whether it be tired, whether it be this, you be that, you be sick, whatever. It's like there's so many things, so many factors that can take you away from being you, of course. And of course they can be excuses and sometimes valid. But it's like, are you gonna just make the most of it? Or what? Like what are you gonna do about it? And for me, it's just being alpha is just being you, not allowing anything to get in your way, not allowing anything to affect you enough to where you're not you, being consistent. And I don't think there's anything more powerful than being your best self consistently. If someone knows what they're going to expect from Luka Delatry or Zach Neff, that's a very, very, very big compliment. They know what they're going to get. It's like they call him. It's like I know what I'm going to get from him. It's not like, oh, let's see what he is like today. Oh, what's going on today? Let's see, hit or miss. Oh, how is he going to be today playing? I don't know. Let's see. It's like I took a lot of pride in my consistency playing wise. Like you knew what you were going to get from me. And granted, I went through some injuries, so like that played a little role in some ups and downs. But for the most part, you knew what you were going to get from me when I stepped on the field, and I took a lot of pride in that. And the idea of that mental coach I was talking about with the Cardinals asked me about my routine off the field. It's like, well, how do you expect yourself to be the same person every day off the field if you're not doing things? You don't have a routine off the field. And so one of the biggest things I had to learn was like I went a lot of ups and downs. I had triggers. Everyone has triggers still, but being able to snap back from them pretty fast. And if a trigger can knock you out for 3 days, for example, like you have a traumatic experience, you have like this anxious, and it promotes anxiety, and like you're kind of catching yourself for a few days to kind of get back to baseline. It's like, yes, that's not that you're vulnerable in those 4 days. Everyone's vulnerable to a certain extent always, but if you can just be yourself no matter what, you're powerful. So to me, that's what the alpha looks like: being himself and being you, and having that be what people expect from you. If people can expect you to be you every time, I'd say you're doing something pretty good.
I want to switch gears into is not even switching gears. I want to expand on the focus part of it a little bit. And a couple of days ago, I was in my basement and I was taking golf swings, foam ball, but I want to get better at golf. I progressed a lot from this season. We got to play a lot of free golf in York, and I think it's a fun activity to do with the fellas, especially in lovely weather and time off. So I want to get better at it because I'm competitive and I hate losing and watching balls go into the forest. So I was downstairs and I was working on my swing, and obviously I'm in basement. I'm in the basement. I don't get to see ball flight. I don't have a simulator. I got nothing like that. I just have a little foam golf balls, and I brought out my club, and I walked away from it very like I immediately went to my journal, and what I want to describe to you is I was swinging, and when I was hitting the ball like consistently striking it well, my only focus and everything was focused on the ball. Like I just watched the club hit the ball and even go through the ball before I moved my like focused on the result. And so those balls, I struck the ball with pure like it left the club. I felt it leave the club. It was amazing. I wasn't worried about my hand position. I wasn't worried about my hips. And then all of a sudden, like I chase that rabbit. I'm like, oh, I want more power. How do I engage my hips a little more? And then I would shank it, and I can see that ball flight. It rings off the side of my basement, and I'm like, why do I do that? Like why whenever I'm doing something, why do I not just focus on the thing that works? The simple thought of just staying down through the ball, and like I'm always chasing more within what I'm doing. So I wrote in my journal, and it was all about focus. The only thing had to do with mental focus, and I think it applies to everything. Is if I'm doing a task, I can only focus on that one task. And it kind of like brings us back to like that elite level thinking is like I'm only worried about that one pitch at a time. I'm only worried about like keeping head on the ball, like head down through the ball. Like there's only that one simple thought that dominates that action. Like when I start chasing other avenues, like it it doesn't work for me. But I guess my question is why? Like why, or do you have a similar thing whenever you're doing something new or learning something new, that you chase something and your focus, even if you're doing something you're good at, and your focus goes is it almost a distraction? Like why are we attracted to distraction?
So you're saying that when you were trying to hit the ball harder, or you were trying to focus on hitting the ball, like having the ball go further, like you were focusing on where the ball was going rather than just hitting it. Is that what you're saying, or you're
So
trying to
my
just hit the ball harder?
So the result I wanted was the ball to go directly off the thing and bounce off the back wall and come back to me. That was the result that I was desiring. Like I just wanted the ball to go
Mm-hmm.
straight. My problem in golf is that I slice it. So
More to the
I was
club.
working on ball strike. I just wanted to strike the ball well and hit it straight. So that was my goal.
And when
And
you start, yeah, you
when I
try to
was
hit it harder, you lost that.
or yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in terms of my experiences playing and stuff, like there's always stages to everything. So I noticed that if I try to jump the gun, if I'm, you know, when I was younger or whatever, if I'm trying to work on something and I focus on doing it harder rather than learning the movement first, the foundation to it. It's like you can't like run before you walk, and so for me, like that's something I can relate to. But um, I think to a certain extent also the idea of focusing on the output rather than actually what you're doing, like focusing on where the ball's going rather than just doing what you're doing here, because that will take care of that. Like if you just keep your head down, you don't need to look where the ball's going. As long as the swing's good, the ball will go where you want it to. You don't have to look at it. Um, so in essence, it's almost like watching the next moment before this moment's over. You know, and I think you know where I'm going with this. It's like the idea that like trusting that this moment will take care of the next as long as you maximize it. Like one of the sayings that I tell myself every single day is the future is a compilation of all present moments that are maximized to their potential. Take care of now, be your best self now, and he will take care of later. So
Can you
basically,
say
like,
that again but slower?
sorry, the future is a compilation of all present moments that are maximized to their potential. Take care of now, be your best self now, and he will take care of later. So not to bring God into this. You know, God's not putting his hand and bringing the ball where where he wants it to go, or where you want it to go. But the principle is basically the same. It's just like what needs to happen in the future will happen as long as you take care of this moment, and this moment being the swing. You know, and if you maximize everything you need to do in this moment with the swing, and you make sure that it's everything you need to be, and you don't focus on where the ball's going, you just focus on all your attention on the actual swing itself and making sure that it's proper, well, the ball will end up where you need it to go. The ball will end up on the wall and come back to you if you allow your focus to be on the swing itself in that moment, rather than picking your head up early and watching where the ball is going, because everyone has that instinct, like intrinsic ability or intrinsic desire to like see where the ball is going before it actually finishes. Like when you hit the ball and you're batting, like you want to see where the ball is going before you're done. You pull your head out, like there's all these different things. So I'd imagine it's similar to that. I mean, like you were saying, it applies to everything. It really does. If you're doing anything,
So is it
no, what I say?
is it discipline? Is it discipline to stay in that focus? Like
It's trust.
to repeat that. Well, to repeat, like if I go to my basement and I want to take 100 swings just like that,
Mhm.
do I just like? Is that a realistic ideal, or do I start with one and then tomorrow I do two, and then the next day I do three? Like, it's about the ability to stay in that focus. Is it the discipline to stay in that focus?
I would
Right?
say so. The discipline comes from, I think, is a byproduct of different things, but it's more of a trust, and the trust comes from repetition. So basically, you need to be able to trust that whatever you're doing will create the output that you want it to become, or what you want to happen. That's where the trust comes in. So when you prove that to yourself, and you prove that whatever you're doing in this moment is creating the output that you want, that creates a trust in just doing what you do, being who you are, doing the things that got you to what you're doing. And then the discipline is to not falter when things go wrong. Because that's a very, very, especially in sports, like, shit hits the fan, you're very, like, you want to change things. You don't want to keep failing. But a lot of times the reason for the failure has nothing to do with you. It's not the biomechanics, it's not the way you're throwing the ball, it's not the way you're swinging. It's like maybe it's just the wind. Maybe you shank the ball, maybe it's slicing because there's 60-mile-an-hour winds that are pulling the ball to the right. I mean, that's just an example. You're not a PGA guy, but let's say a PGA guy, they're constantly they're constantly pulling the ball. It's like if they're not, they obviously know there's wind, but it just maybe there's just a bit better. There's a slice on the ball. The ball is a little like a scuff to it. And like maybe you'd be like, oh, I need to do this. I sliced it all the times in training. When I slice, it's because I'm doing this. Okay, well the next one I'm going to do this to counter that. Well, maybe it had nothing to do with you. One of the sayings I love to say when I was playing catch, right, and I was out there throwing them, and the ball would start tailing on me, I'd be like, give me a new ball. That's my first thing. Like, give me a new ball, because it's not me, it's the ball. And like it's a funny way of saying, obviously sometimes it is me, but like after a few times the kid's just like, why do you need a new ball? I'm like, because it kept tailing. They're like, yeah, who cares? I was like, well, it's not my fault, it's the ball. If it keeps happening with the next ball, maybe it is me, but I'm going to give it another shot. Like before I change something that I'm doing, I'm going to make sure it's not me. But like, this is a long-winded way of saying that. This is a long-winded way of just saying like the trust comes from repetition, trusting that what you're doing is right, and it's what needs to be done. And then the discipline is trusting to continue on with what you've learned when things go a little south. And to give you a practical example of this, and I don't mean to put my girlfriend on the spot, but this is like to see exactly how different this is an example, but it applies the same thing. My girlfriend and I were planning on. I haven't really talked to her dad yet about this. I'm actually gonna ask him about this when I go to Florida next weekend. So I hope he doesn't listen to this, because, But we're planning on having her move up. Like she's thinking about moving up here to Hoboken, and that's a big next step for us. So she's planning on doing that, and we didn't really have like a long-winded conversation about it. It's kind of been something that she mentioned, but like we didn't talk anything else about the logistics of it, this and that. We just know something we want to do. And I guess intrinsically what she was doing was she was going through a little thing where it was just like going through what could go wrong, or like having these like doubts about like changing life, and moving up here, and her job would be a little different. She's a flight attendant, so she in terms of the job it wouldn't be too different, but like how she'd be traveling, this and that would be different. Obviously where she's living would be different. Not being away from her family, being away from her friends, like all these things would be different, of course. But she found herself thinking of all these different things, right? And then of course it turned into some things having to do with us and whatever. It was just the whole thought process wasn't anymore about like how are we going to just make these moments better and moving forward and make these things we like experiences we want to repeat, because that's what got us to this point. But what changed was she was actually just focusing on like all the things that can go wrong, and like not so much of how are we just by being us and being the people we are in this moment and doing the things that have gotten us here will get us through those things when they come. She was thinking already about the future and what the things that could possibly happen, and that was affecting her ability to be present. And I noticed it in conversation, I noticed it in the way she was thinking, I noticed it in the way she was acting towards herself, obviously towards me. And then I was sitting there trying to be cerebral about it. It's like, what's going on? And it dawned on me, maybe this could be it. And obviously, it wasn't me that brought it up. She's the one that did bring it up in conversation and stuff. And my simple question when she said these things about like, the things that can go wrong about like you being away from friends and family, like what if this, what if that, right? I was just like, well, we've talked about this. Like we've mentioned many times, like, we've gotten to this point because the only thing we focus on is enjoying each other in each moment. Like we've gotten here because that's our focus. So what makes you think that going forward it's going to be any different? I was like, if that happens, it happens. And like, we can address it properly. And if something we can't address properly, then it means that maybe that's the end of the relationship. I don't know. If there's something we can't work through, then that's signs that things are on the downfall. But like thinking about it now and what could go wrong later is just taking you away from now. And as long as you just continue on with what you're doing in this moment, later whatever comes, you'll be able to address properly. But it's a similar situation. It's like I told her, it's like, well, maybe you're thinking too much about what can go wrong rather than just letting everything happen and just being exactly who we've been. And she was like, huh, yeah, actually, that's probably what I'm doing wrong. I was like, yeah, I'm not telling you how to act, but maybe just focus on now. Yeah, that's a possibility for sure. But like, maybe if we just take care of now, that can be alleviated. And those are practical examples. Obviously, it's a golf swing, but it's more about life in general. And I think that's a practical example of just that. So to answer your question, where does the discipline or where does that come from? It's like trusting what you're doing in this moment is right, and that'll take care of everything. On the spot.
No, I'm all in, and I think that's where we should, end this one.
Oh my God! Wow, that was fast. 55 minutes already.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is these times spent with you, they go by in a blink of an eye. And
holy crap!
That's kind of like, not kind of. That is the reason that I enjoy like these conversations with you is because even though it is an hour, like an hour is I guess a long time, but they go by in very fast moments.
Yeah.
So. Like sharing that with the world is fun. So, and then bringing on people that also do that with us is going to be even better. So, I guess we'll wrap it up here, and we want to thank you guys for tuning in and listening and helping us grow and all of that. And again, thank you to our newly found sponsor and Virgil and his company of Wild Pitch Hot Sauce. So please give it a try, and I'll apply that link in the bottom here. And please continue to listen. Please continue to share. Also, we would maybe I'll put out a poll once I figure out how to do that, or even just comment with questions. I appreciate you coming on with me, Luca, and looking forward to having a guest on us with our next episode. That should be interesting. That'll be our first time doing that, and we'll see what comes of it. So thank you.
Yeah, one last thing before we go is we are just creating an Instagram. So if you guys want to go out and give us a follow and kind of see what we put out there, our vision for the page itself. We're both not the social media type of people, but our goal with the page is basically to share things that inspire us, share things that get our minds turning, get our minds thinking, that basically result in conversations like we have. So the page itself will solely just be based on things that get us inspired. Whether it be Jordan Peterson, whether it be quotes, whether it be anything that can get us that gets some type of thought provoking. Because I feel like if it promotes thought, it's something that's worth at least looking at. So You know,
and
go
us
give it a
learning
follow.
social media and us learning social
Yeah,
media.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
be patient with us.
Yeah,
We're both not great fans of social media, but
No.
we're gonna learn, no doubt. And it's going to be by trial by error. So
Yeah, absolutely.
please enjoy our mistakes as well.
Absolutely. But
Seriously.
go give it a follow, and hope we can just promote some thought in you. That's the goal.
Amen to that. So thank you. I'll talk to you soon, Luke.
Yes, sir.
Luca?
Enjoy yourself.
Luca. Peace, brother.